you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. You have
Did you
fun at
enjoy
the
the
car
car?
show?
I like being outside, but cars don't interest me.
We'll call the City Council meeting to order for today. It is Monday, May 17th, 2021 at 5:30 in the afternoon. I would, welcome everyone for being here, and also just a quick reminder to go ahead and put your electronic devices either on silent or on vibrate, and we'll keep the distractions down to a minimum. Roll call, please.
Carey.
Here.
Janser.
Here.
Olson. Here. Pittner.
Here.
Padragula.
Here.
Ross.
Here.
Sitma.
Here. Number 2 is Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Number 3 on our agenda is we do have a couple of different proclamations for us this evening. The first is City of Minot Mayor proclaiming summer of 2021 as the Summer of Reading for 20. Proclamation reads, whereas research has proven that reading for just 20 minutes a day can drastically improve students' test scores and increase their vocabulary, whereas reading will not only help in school success, but will stimulate imagination, which can introduce children to concepts, cultures, and possibilities beyond their own experiences and thereby building empathy. Whereas when children read for 20 minutes a day, they can be hearing and thus learning up to 1.8 million words a year. Whereas adults who read for at least 20 minutes each day sharpen a variety of skills that are valuable in the workforce, including memory retention, social emotional skills, and critical thinking. Whereas the experience of being read to helps children develop good listening skills by making them aware of the important components of language. Whereas families who read together for 20 minutes a day, 7 days a week, will get 121 hours of bonding each and every year. Whereas research by the National Literacy Trust found that 90% of children feel happiest when reading and writing rather than playing video games or watching television. Whereas young adults who enter college without establishing reading habits will struggle to focus, develop critical thinking skills, and understand complex issues. Whereas the ability to focus for 20 minutes helps lead to informed voters and involved citizens who can critically evaluate issues. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Sean Sitma, Mayor of Minot, proclaim the summer of 2021 as the Summer Reading for 20. During this summer, I encourage all residents to join together to promote the Read for 20 campaign by making the time to read on your own or with a child for 20 minutes each day. I do understand that we do have some folks that are here from the literacy campaign and Minot Public Library who would like to grab a picture. We'll come up and do that right now. So somebody's got to stand next to me, otherwise I feel really awkward. So Janet and everyone else within the literacy campaign and our Teacher of the Year fellow F-16 pilot here, congratulate you on the proclamation and look forward to a productive summer and productive year. So thank you. And this is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you. One more proclamation. City of Minot proclaims May 16th through the 22nd, 2021, the National Public Works Week, Stronger Together. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are vitally important to sustainable and resilient communities and to public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of Minot, North Dakota. Whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of the public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other infrastructure facilities essential for our citizens. Whereas in its public interest for its citizens, civic leaders, and children in Minot to gain knowledge of and to maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and the public works program in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2021 marks the 61st annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association, Canadian Public Works Association, be it now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Sean Sitma, the mayor of Minot, do hereby designate the week of May 16th through the 22nd, 2021 as the National Public Works Week, and I urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association, Canadian Public Works Association, and the government agencies and activities and event ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public work professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. In witness, therefore, I have hereunto my hand cause with the seal of the city of Minot this May 17th, May 2021. Dan, I won't make you come up and take a picture with me, but I'll make sure that you get this at the end of the meeting. That is the end of the proclamations for the mayor's portion of this. Number 5 on our agenda is our legislative recap. We do have Mr. Shane Gettle, who spent a significant amount of time down at the Capitol with us, myself, city staff, and many others lobbying on our behalf. Mr. Gettle, I appreciate you being here with us tonight and look forward to kind of all that is taken place and transpired.
Absolutely.
If you would just lower the mic down so that the folks at home can hear.
Is this working? Okay, great. Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor and the council members. It's a pleasure to be in front of you and having wrapped up an unusual session, to say the least, for a variety of reasons, not the least of which was that while public had less access perhaps to the Capitol than what we've seen in the past, and there were certainly less of the public there doing the things we would normally see during a session. At the same time, the public had unprecedented access by virtue of the remote technology that was able to persist throughout the session. Now, my job tonight is to kind of give you a high-level briefing of what happened. There's a lot of slides here, but I promise I won't spend a minute on each of these slides, or we'd be here a long time. Does this control?
As long as the side is turned on.
Okay.
There you go.
All right, so we wrapped up the session on the 76th day, April 29th, 2021. The legislature saved 4 days to call themselves back into session, and one of the reasons they might do that is that they may need a special session for CARES Act dollars that guidance hadn't come for and which hadn't even, in some cases, arrived yet. We'll see how that goes. There'll also be redistricting later this year, and that will occur in December. So the legislature will no doubt be back in session before year's end. This session, there were 914 bills and resolutions introduced. 500 of those, and even 500, passed both chambers. 29 were withdrawn. And the legislature passed a record $16.9 billion two-year budget. Now, that is not a record general fund budget. There's a lot of federal dollars that have flown into our budget that propel us over that record. Plus, of course, what's not counted in the general fund budget are the oil and tax distribution dollars. This is not a record general fund budget. That occurred in the 2013-2015 session of $6.8 billion. Our general fund, while up 3% from the previous biennium, is approximately $5 billion. So that's $1.8 billion less than the previous record established in 13-15. And of course, no tax increases at all to speak of in any way. And so those are some of the highlights from the session itself. I want to cover Hub City funding formula, and the Hub City funding remained intact this session. It's the first session since Hub Cities came into being that we didn't have any change in the law with regard to how Hub Cities are funded. Mr. Mayor, you were involved with negotiating how we came out on that 2 sessions ago. But I'll go through the very complex formula. I've highlighted the fact that when it comes to the oil and gas distribution affecting Hub Cities, we're on the oil and gas production tax side of the ledger here, not the extraction tax. And as you go down that chart, we're also in the 4% of the 5% tax. I'll get into how that looks here in a minute, but here are the legislative assumptions. That in fiscal year 2022, that's the time period between July 1st of this year, 2021, and June 30th of next year, the legislature assumed 1.1 million barrels of production per day and priced that at $50 per barrel, and then dropped that production to 1 million barrels per day, but held the price at 50. So that's what goes into the assumptions and the numbers that you see in that chart. So I'm just going to take the extractions tax side and show you where the Hub City funding comes from. It comes from two different places. One is a Hub City funding pool. That's a fixed pool of $44 million. It's what saved us this time from a dramatic drop in Hub City distribution funding, because there's a floor here that's set by this pool for the biennium. The variability really comes from down below in the next one, the $39.5 million there, because that's based on an impact score for each Hub City and has a lot more variability when it comes to what comes through the formula. That's much more sensitive to price and production variables. Now, where we ended up relative to Williston and Dickinson, which are the other two hub cities, is through a complicated formula that calculates the mining, quarrying, and oil and gas extraction employment, both our percentage of that, the average of that, and our human service region, which allows us to include Mountrail County, Burke County, and you'll see the percentage of establishments engaged in that relative to other establishments in the industry. And as Dickinson and Williston mature as cities, as they diversify as cities, their score will be impacted by this as well, and relatively speaking, Minot's will rise. I think we'll see that over time, but it didn't move much between this past biennium and the present one that we're into, at least in terms of the projections. So where does that put us? Well, Minot's impact score is assumed right now to be about 11.7%. We'll see if the census data ends up changing some of that, but assuming that because that's where we're at about right now, assuming that the formula should generate about $4.8 million in fiscal year 2022, and then $4.7 million in fiscal year 2023 for Minot. So $9.5 million is based upon the legislative assumptions, which are conservative, I would say. Again, 1.1 million barrels of production and one, respectively, and $50 of oil. You're currently on tap for about $4.7 million in fiscal year 2021. So you don't see a lot of change there in terms of where you're at now and projecting the future. But I did a little bit of sensitivity analysis on this. So the price, if we hold the production even, but the price per barrel of oil goes up by $10 over the same biennium and holding everything else the same, then the formula would generate $5.2 million per year, roughly, in both of the years of the biennium, for about a $10.4 million for the biennium estimate. So you can say a conservative case is $4.75 million per year, just averaging them. Aggressive case, adding another $10 per barrel, 5.2. So your range is going to be here 9.5 to 10.4 million estimate for the biennium. Now maybe production climbs, maybe price exceeds that simple analysis, but you can kind of gauge it a little bit here. For every $10, you can kind of see where you might be roughly. The other big issue, though, that we spent a lot of time on was the Water Commission budget and the bonding bill. The House bill was 1020 and 1431 for those respectively. Now, for the Resources Trust Fund, we're actually on the oil extraction tax side of the ledger here. That's how the Resources Trust Fund gets its dollars, and it's projected to get 325.3 million. However, that's not the end of the story. But right now, the 1431 provides additional resources over and above that. And this is what we're bonding for. You'll see that what I've highlighted there is the $74.5 million that will go to the Resources Trust Fund. And then you see correspondingly in the Water Commission budget that $74.5 million is specifically earmarked for Moush River flood protection. You'll see the other dollars that the bonding bill covers here as well. So in the Water Commission budget, there's $125 million set aside for water supply. There's another $48 million for flood control projects that's not earmarked at all. That's just open right now. And it does mean that in theory, Moush River flood project could apply for more than 74.5. That's the discussion I have with the Water Commission, especially if the extraction tax starts generating more revenue for the Water Resources Trust Fund. There's also a $50 million line of credit for NAS. And that line of credit is something that's put in place with the expectation that when the federal money comes in, that would get paid back. But that's to keep the project moving and not waiting for the federal dollars. So With regard to Mouse River Enhanced Flood Protection, we have a guarantee here of $74.5 million, may apply for funding over this amount. We achieved something else this session, though, and that was to move the legislative intent for the life of the project. And based on one of the scenarios that we put in front of them, they picked $604 million. Now, the key thing here, and this is something that I think is really important, the State Water Commission may not approve state funding in excess of a total of $604 million without legislative approval. So in other words, if this kind of language stays intact, we just go to them and continue to apply, and they're not some of the money that's just generally available could come this way, and they just can't spend over this amount without going back to the legislature. So this should set the stage for at least a 10 years for the next 10 years, I think. And you'll see that how they framed that language. I quoted the bill here. That $604,000, the 74.5 is provided from resources trust fund through the bond proceeds used to repay outstanding loans. So the $604,000 then will be into it by $74.5 million by the time this next biennium is done. That was a key, by the way, a key strategy we had going into the session to kind of get off the mile marker for the initial phase and move beyond for the total life of the project. With regard to Northwest Area Water Supply, that's funded in the water supply appropriation. There's that line of credit with the Bank of North Dakota. And then they also put in here that legislative management with input from the State Water Commission shall consider studying the Northwest Area Water Supply project. Study must conclude consideration of an entity other than the state to own, manage, and operate the project, and that they shall report its findings to the next legislative session. We're going to see this again in another bill. This is what was put into the Water Commission budget. This is the other bill, House Bill 1063, that dealt with NAWS funding. It modified, it updated really the representation on the advisory board. It removed Williston, Mount Trail, Divide, and Williams counties and the 3 affiliated tribes. Added Turtle Mountain as a non-voting member of the advisory council, and then changed some of the duties here. The advisory committee shall meet no less than once per quarter. The State Water Commission shall provide staffing and support for the advisory committee. And then you'll see that the advisory committee itself shall develop recommendations for legislative management regarding the transition of long-term operations and management of NAWS. And that the advisory committee is to report that to the legislative management. And the way it does that in the next biennium is spelled out below. It shall report to the interim committee, which will no doubt be the Water Topics Committee that will be put together this week probably. One other NAWS bill that Paul Pittner came down and testified on that was a resolution. I believe it was HCR 3034 that sent a resolution from this legislature to Congress asking for full funding of the biota treatment plant. Moving on to some other high-level topics that were in the legislative session, we had the big topic of how to use the legacy fund, both the principal as well as the earnings from the legacy fund. I'll talk about this in big picture. 1380 prioritized legacy fund earnings, future earnings, by the way, not this biennium's, but future earnings into streams. And the streams are funded in the following order. The first $150 million to legacy sinking and interest fund, $60 million to the highway tax distribution fund. And then the remaining funds, $50 million for tax relief, $30 million for clean sustainable energy fund, and $30 million for university research programs. The next bill is important, 1425, creates a revolving loan fund for legacy infrastructure projects, provides targeted allocations of legacy fund principal now. This is the idea that we should be investing some of the principal in North Dakota, and they want 10% of it in fixed income investments and 10% in equity investments. In the fixed income side of the things, up to 40% is set aside for infrastructure loans for political subdivisions. So that's going to fund a revolving loan fund for political subdivisions into the future. And then 60% to support the existing match program at the Bank of North Dakota. That's going to be important, I think, as we go into the future and we talk about funding for the local share of the flood protection. I already covered 1431, but that dealt with the bonding. The bonding is being paid back using legacy fund earnings. COVID-19, of course, was a big topic. There are a number of pieces of legislation relating back to what we've all experienced with COVID-19. One of the highlights of the session was liability protection. It bars certain claims and provides immunity fences related to COVID-19 for both profit and nonprofit organizations, manufacturers, and healthcare facilities. States of emergency. The way that came out is that a governor can still declare a state of emergency, but that will end its useful life, and the governor can't renew it like he had been doing unless legislative management is called in and then permits a virtual session of the Legislative Assembly. And so they want to involve themselves a little more in the decision to end or extend states of emergency. Masks, the way this ended up was 1323, a statewide elected official or the state health officer may not mandate an individual in the state to use a face mask. However, the discretion to do so at the local level remains intact. Vaccine passports, 1465 prohibits a state or any political subdivision from requiring documentation of vaccination or post-transmission recovery status. It also prohibits businesses from requiring patrons or customers to provide the kind of documentation for those things. And then federal funds. Lots was done in this area, giving the Emergency Commission more flexibility, but also requiring the governor to call a special session if the total amount of federal funds to be dealt with was exceeds $50 million. 1395 similarly provided more of that flexibility at the Emergency Commission and Budget section. And then in the Commerce Bill, Senate Bill 2018, that provided up to $2 million for travel agent and tour operator emergency resilience grants and $2 million for event center emergency resiliency grants. Then we get into some specific bills that you or members of your council came down and took action on or testified in. I've tried to collect as many as I could note from my records. Now, I may have missed one or two, but hopefully I've got them all. A lot of these are just updates. You heard these before. And if it was up before you before, I just highlighted what happened from my last report. 2130 was established neighborhood zones. We were in favor of this. It did pass the House, but the House had turned it in before that into a income tax rate reduction bill. So it didn't look anything like it had started. And the Senate ultimately defeated that Hog House bill, as you see here. You also generally took the position of opposing restrictions on local taxation. Reported on these bills, and they had already seen their conclusion last time I was in front of you. So I'm just going to flip through them because we talked about them last time. 1372 was to put a freeze on assessed value in certain situations for people who are disabled, eligible for disabled veteran credit over 65 years of age. That was ultimately defeated on February 9th in the House. 1325 would have froze residential property owned and occupied by an individual over 65. That was amended into a study concerning the adequacy of property relief for retired individuals. Passed the House, but was defeated in the Senate on March 30th. 1446 would have provided for property tax credits using legacy fund earnings. That was ultimately defeated on the House side, and you can see the vote there. HB 1300 relates to special assessment fund balances. That did pass the House, but was ultimately defeated in the Senate on March 12th. And then we had a couple resolutions that were not in front of you last time because they were introduced shortly after I had presented to you. There was a proposed constitutional amendment to freeze taxes and tax rates except as authorized by 2/3 vote of each legislative chamber. Mayor Sitma submitted testimony in opposition. The House adopted this on March 9th, but the Senate defeated it on April 1st. And another resolution, proposed constitutional amendment that would exempt all property identified as primary residence in North Dakota. And of course, the effect of that would be to take all of that off of your property tax base, leaving everything else on there. Mayor Sitma submitted written testimony in opposition, and the House failed to adopt this on March 9th. So it didn't move over to the Senate. And then we had restrictions during emergency conditions, a couple bills here. This one I reported on last time, failed to adopt. 1260, that was the wage and salary moratorium on state or local officials and employees if certain temporary restrictions on businesses are imposed. Mayor Sitma testified in opposition. That was defeated on February 18th by the House. And then prohibiting political subdivisions from limiting or otherwise regulating hours of operation or capacity of private businesses. Mayor Sitma testified in opposition to that. That passed the House, but then failed to pass the Senate. And then there were some changes to city elections that were proposed. We talked about 1182 last time. That was both city council members Lisa Olson and Carrie Evans submitted written testimony. That was defeated on the House floor. And then allowing qualified electors in extraterritorial zones to vote in city elections. That did pass the House in a very narrow vote on February 23rd, but ultimately it was defeated in March. That should be March, not Mary, sorry, and in the Senate. And then some restrictions on city governance, bills that were characterized as that. This one I had reported on fully last time. 1138 allows civil actions against the state and political subdivisions for violating free speech. We testified in opposition here. That was defeated on the House floor, so it didn't move on to the Senate. Senate Bill 2188 related to the city authority to regulate the sale of consumer merchandise. Brian Billingsley submitted written testimony in opposition. That was defeated on the floor of the Senate on February 8th. 1222 related to non-conforming structures. Again, Brian Billingsley testified in opposition and provided written testimony in opposition to the Senate. That did pass the House floor on February 23rd, but was defeated in the Senate on March 26th. 1443 related to the duty of Peace Officer Standards and Training Board to provide training on bias crimes, aggravated assault, harassment, and criminal mischief. Chief of Police John Klug submitted testimony in opposition, signaled that with some amendments maybe we could work with this, but that was ultimately defeated on the House floor. 1367 related to the adoption or referral of preliminary budgets of cities. This would have required you to submit your preliminary budgets to voter approval. It was converted to a proposed study in the House. The study passed the House floor on March 3rd, but that study was defeated on March 26th in the Senate. Finally, we have the intermodal facility. Where that ended up, it provides $2 million in funding to support the extension of track to enable loading of full unit trains. That's 110 cars. The Minot Chamber EDC led this effort, and there were many amendments to this bill. The final votes, and it went through both chambers a couple times, but the final votes on this were $2 million of Federal CARES Act appropriated. We got a very strong vote ultimately in the House on this on April 29th, 82-6, and the unanimous vote in the Senate that same day. It passed over to the Senate. So that got done. What remains is approval through OMB that these dollars can be used for this purpose. And then the Ag Commissioner is the one who was designated to administer the grant. And so we have some work to do in both those places. So that leads up to the 2021-2022 interim. There's a possible special session, as I mentioned, for the CARES Act dollars, and special session for redistricting we can expect later this year, and then interim studies and committees. Now, in the past, I've had the ability to stand in front of you and tell you which studies the legislative management has picked, but they don't meet until Wednesday of this week. So I'll have to supplement this report with the studies that may be of interest to the city after that meeting on Wednesday. However, like I said, they meet on Wednesday, April 19th, and they'll choose from among the many discretionary studies that are authorized in the bills. Most of those studies get authorized with shall consider language, and so legislative management shall consider, which gives them discretion. There are a few studies that sometimes have more firm language, like will study or shall study. And then they'll assign those studies to the interim committees, and so I'll update the city with regard to what studies are moving forward. I have had some conversations with Jim Schmidt, who's most likely going to be chair of the Interim Water Topics Committee, or at least vice chair. We'll see how that turns out. But he has indicated he wants to come up, bring the committee up to Minot this summer already. And that's an opportunity for the city to put together a full plan of attack, basically, with regard to that committee, our messaging, what we want to get across, and the opportunity to update on both flood protection and NAS at that point. So that's something we'll have to work at here in the next few months. So that's your rough overview, high-level overview of the legislative session. I'd stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gettle. And for the folks either listening at home or in the audience or even at the dais, what was left out of the report was the weekly League of Cities updates that came from the league. Mr. Gettle also provided input on some of those bills, and then the after action with the city manager and myself and with Mr. Gettle, and likely the follow-up emails on Saturdays and Sundays and all hours of the day throughout the week. So there was a significant amount of work that was done. Thank you, Mr. Gettle, for your due diligence. For the council's benefit, it was very instrumental in helping getting that verbiage for the essentially getting the milestone removed in the language for long-term funding and then moving towards it more than $600 million. So that was very appreciative, as that was a large effort, not only down there, but also letting us know when we needed to be down there and helping tie in not only the elected, but staff as well. So any questions for Mr. Gettle at this time? I would just like to remind you, Shane, June 26th, we're talking about this later in our agenda tonight, but June 26th is an event that's coming up. It is the 10th anniversary of the Mouse River flood. We've chatted about this before, but certainly hope that you're there as you played a part in that 10 years ago. And we're also going to be inviting those water topics folks up here as well, so you can let them know.
Very good. All right. Look forward to it. Thank you.
I don't have a question. I just have a general
yes.
comment. Not for you, Shane. Just, I would like to thank particularly our new city manager, Harold Stewart. I mean, he's, if y'all recall, he started and like literally the legislative session, what was that, the next week? And he, and along with so many of our department heads and staff, really, were there and stepped up to offer both written and verbal testimony in Bismarck and provide their expertise so that we can, as a council, know whether or not how this would impact your departments. So I know everybody has their regular duties during their job, but during the legislative session, staff were amazingly receptive and quick with responses. And I think Harold probably, how many miles? You became like a part-time resident of Bismarck, I believe.
Probably not as much as the mayor, but we did a lot of due diligence, a lot of
So
watching.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alderwoman Evans. Any final comments? If not, we'll move on to our next agenda area here. Number 7 is to consider the report of the Planning Commission. We do have 4 items within this agenda section. 2 of them are public hearings, and 2 of them just do have, I'm sorry, I'm skipping right by the city manager's report. Let's go over to our city manager for that.
No, that's good. I will keep it brief, as we'll be spending a lot of time together this week as part of our budget tours of the departments, and staff and I are looking forward to having the council join us on that as we discuss what we've done with last year's and this year's budgets and what we're looking at considering for consideration in the upcoming budget cycle. With that, I would like to talk a little bit about some activity that happened the middle of last week. I was actually out of town. I was attending the Williston Petroleum Conference. That was time well spent, helped me understand a little bit about the security of the future of the Bakken and the oil industry for the state of North Dakota and its impacts on Minot going forward, and that all looks very good and healthy. But while I was gone, I'm sure the public and the council are aware that sometime last year there was some public records requests with regards to some documentation on some personnel action the council had taken with the previous city manager. There was some gray area in regards to whether or not the work product of the attorney that the city used to do that investigation was protected underneath the exemption of state law of attorney work product or not. And then that was subsequently appealed to the Attorney General's office for his opinion on whether or not that was deemed a public record or exempt. Last week, the Attorney General did come out with an opinion that that was public record and that the city of Minot was to release that. So with that, we have had numerous requests for that information here over the last few days into the city staff offices. and in an effort to increase transparency between the city and the public and hopefully save some time for staff. I have directed staff to make those documents available on the city's website. So any of the public that would like to see those documents, those will be on the city's website that you can download at your leisure and look at those if you would like. But we look forward to hopefully coming to a resolution of that issue and continue to move the organization and the community forward in a positive and meaningful way. With that, my regular city manager report is included in the council packets, which is available to the council and the public. I'd be happy to answer any questions or have any follow-up with regards to that. But if there is no questions, I look forward to spending time with council here over the next couple of weeks. And again, a reminder that next Monday at this same time will be a work session focused strictly on economic development with some education and some perspective on that regards for the community of Minot and the city as an organization going forward. So a lot of conversations happening here over the next couple of weeks will have huge impact on decision-making for the foreseeable future.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Any questions from council? All right. Thank you, Harold. Now we can move on to number 7. This is consider the report of the Planning Commission. Again, there were 2 public hearings and 2 other items with recommendations. I'll look to the council if we need to take those other 2 items individually. If not, I would look for a recommendation.
I'll make a motion for those 2 non-public hearing items to be approved as recommended.
Motion by Alderwoman Evans for 7.1 and 7.4 as recommended. Second by Alderman Janser. Any discussion on the motion to approve? Any discussion? Final call for discussion. Seeing none, the motion is to approve 7.1 and 7.4 as recommended. Please call the roll.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Pittner?
Yes.
Padrigula?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Sitman?
Yes. Motion is approved. 7.2 is public hearing, the Ruth Addition Lot 1 and 2, a public hearing to consider the request by and from Nathan Amick representing Souris River Joint Board and David Koop from a zoning district change to revise the existing zoning district boundaries of AG, which is agricultural district, and P, the public zone, to establish AG on Lot 1 and P on Lot 2, Ruth Addition. The Planning Commission recommends City Council approve 1, the subdividing plat of the Ruth Addition, which includes Outlot 31 of an unplotted portion of the southeast quarter, northwest quarter, Section 21, Township 155, North Range 83, west of Ward County, North Dakota. 2, adopt a resolution amending the existing future land map of the comprehensive plan boundaries of low-density residential with a conceptual greenway connecting the overlays, public and semi-public, with a conceptual greenway connecting the overlay to establish low-density residential with no change to the conceptual greenway connecting the overlay on lots 1 and the public semi-public with no change to the conceptual greenway connection the overlay on lot 2. And 3, pass an ordinance on the first reading to rezone from AG agricultural district to P public zone to establish the AG agricultural districts on lot 1 and P on public zone lot 2. Again, this is a public hearing for anyone to come forward and speak either in favor or in opposition or neutral to the recommendations that are before us. One more call for public hearing for anyone in favor or opposition or neutral to the proposal. Seeing none, what are the wishes of the council? Alderman Pittner.
Mayor, I move that we close the public hearing and approve the item.
Motion is to close the public hearing and to approve by Alderman Pittner. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Olson. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Final call for discussion. Seeing none, motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Pittner?
Yes.
Padrigula?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Sitman?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Motion is approved. 7.3 is another public hearing, the Norton's Addition lots 14 through 17 in Block 3 of the replat of lots 41 through 49, Block 1, and Blocks 2 and 3. This is a public hearing to consider a request by Travis Mowbray, representing Mowbray Properties LLC, for a zone change from C2 General Commercial to M1 Industrial on lots 14 through 17 in Block 3 of the replat of lots 41 through 49, Block 1, and Blocks 2 and 3 of Norton's Addition. The property is located at 328 20th Avenue Southeast here in Minot. Recommendations from the Planning Commission to the City Council is 1, pass an ordinance on first reading for the zoning change from the C2 General Commercial to M1 Industrial, and 2, adopt a resolution to amend the future land use map for commercial to industrial. Again, this is a public hearing for anyone to come and speak in favor or in opposition or who is neutral. One more call for a public hearing for anyone to come and speak in favor or in opposition. Seeing none, what is the wishes of the council? Alderman Janser.
Mr. Mayor, I move we close the public hearing and approve the item.
Second.
Motion to approve, close the public hearing, and approved by Alderman Janser, second by Alderman Pittner. Any discussion on the motion? Second call for discussion. Final call. Seeing none, the motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padrigula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Motion is approved. That is the final portion of number 7. That takes us to number 8 for consent items. There are 21 different items within consent. I've been asked to pull 8.12 for individual consideration. Look to the council or the audience for any other item that needs to be pulled for individual consideration. If so, let us know and we will pull it. If not, it will pass with the recommendations that came from staff. Seeing none, we are pulling 8.12. What are the, Alderman Pittner?
Mayor, I move that we approve all the remaining items on consent.
Motion to approve the remaining items, 8.1 through 8.11, 8.13 through 8.21 by Alderman Pittner. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Ross. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Final call. Motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padrigula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Individual item 8.12. This is the Minot Airport Parking Facilities Management Agreement. Reef Parking Management is the current vendor for the airport's parking services. Their 5-year contract expired December 31st, 2020, and the additional 120-day holdover period was granted by City Council on December 7th, 2020, resulting in an end date of May 31st, 2021. During the holdover period, the airport published a request for proposals, RFP, in an effort to better evaluate the new business climate as a result of the ongoing pandemic and the current uncertainty in the aviation industry. As part of the airport transition to a concession-based parking management operation from a management fee-based operation, it will provide an increase for non-aeronautical revenue. Recommendations are to approve the parking ramp management contract with LAZ Parking for the management of the airport's parking lots. 2, recommend approval of the parking equipment procurement purchase, and 3, authorize the mayor to sign the agreement. We do have our airport director here prior to a motion, Mr. Rick Feldner, who is going to say a few words and an introduction for a short presentation.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. Thank you very much. I just wanted to come up and introduce this idea, this memo to you about parking. I think this is going to be a really exciting thing for the airport. And just to give you a little background, we have been with the same parking vendor for at least 10 years. In the 5 years I've been here, right when I got here, we extended and the 5-year option to continue. And since that time, there have been a lot of advances in parking and a lot of new technology that's come available. And as you know from looking at budgets, the non-aeronautical revenue generated by parking at the airport is our #1 non-aeronautical revenue generation source, and it even stacks up pretty favorably with some of our highest budget items in aeronautical revenue as well. So being able to effectively manage that revenue source is very important. Obviously, when the airport is revenue positive in something like parking, that reduces my need to come up and ask for tax dollars to operate the airport on an annual basis. So this is a very important source of revenue. It's also a very important service that we provide. We want to make sure that the people that are using the Minot International Airport have the best parking experience that they can possibly have. And we're really excited about Laz taking this challenge. We had 5 companies submit proposals in great detail, and we spent a lot of time evaluating those, and we feel like we have really come up with the best solution here. One of the big changes here is moving from a management fee-based situation to a concession-based situation. In a management fee style, we just simply pay a monthly fee to a company to operate our parking, and we collect the revenue, and we pay this company to manage it. In a concession-based system, a lot of the risk is moved to the concessionaire, who now runs the business as if it were their own and pays the city a commission on the amount of money that they collect. This is the same way we do it with food and beverage and rental cars, for example. And so that is going to provide for a business that is, looked at very carefully and is very operationally sound. So I would be happy to answer any questions about that. And following that, I will introduce the 2 gentlemen that came into town today from Laz, just so they can introduce themselves, their company, and what the people of Minot and the users of our airport can come to expect in terms of parking.
Thank you, Rick. Any questions for our airport director? Alderwoman Evans.
So the question always is, what do other communities with airports in Minot, or in North Dakota do? Are they concession or management?
That's a good question. I'm going to phone a friend and see if Maria behind me knows the answer to that question.
They're all a little different. So Grant Forks is more.
Do you want to come up to the microphone? This is
Sorry, I didn't mean to
Maria.
put you on
I'm
the
sorry. This
spot.
is
I
fine.
was
This is Maria Romanek, and she is our airport services coordinator and has been instrumental in putting this RFP together, getting it off the ground. And once I have departed, this will be kind of her baby to make the transition with. So she's the most knowledgeable about it.
Good evening, council members. Again, my name is Maria Romanek, and I am the airport services coordinator. The airports all operate a little bit differently as far as their parking structures go, kind of what works best for their communities and their airports. Williston's a little different, and Grand Forks are the 2 that I'm the most familiar with. Grand Forks, I believe, is similar to what we have currently, which is the management aspect. Williston is very different. My understanding is very hands-off as far as technology. They aren't staffed all the time, using an app and things like that. So I don't know that you can compare Minot to any of the airports, just like you can't compare any of the airports to one another as far as their parking is concerned.
No, and it seems to make sense for Minot, like
Sure.
based on, everything that you all know about our operations.
Sure.
Thank you, Maria.
Yep, you're welcome.
Any other questions? Seeing none.
Okay, thank you. If there aren't any, I will introduce Stuart and Brendan, and they've got a short
Before Mr.
presentation.
Feltner, though, this is your last city council meeting with us.
It is, yes.
And so I just want to, thank you for all of your service to Minot and its airport and its residents. It has been incredible to see the airport, when I was growing up, right, we were still on Broadway with the, thing, to see where we are now with this legacy building that you're going to leave for us in good hands with your staff. And so we wish you well in your retirement, and thank you for helping make Minot's airport, all that it can be, and a beautiful building and something we're proud of.
Mr. Mayor and Alderwoman Evans, thank you very much. It's been an absolute privilege and a pleasure to serve here at Minot for the last 5 years. I've enjoyed it immensely. I think we've accomplished some things, but I thank you for all the support from elected officials who are here now and who have served before you. They've always been supportive. The city staff has been incredible. They're a hardworking bunch of people, and I've thoroughly enjoyed my time here. So thank you very much.
Good evening. Thank you, Rick and Maria. I am Stuart Veith. I think I have a, let me get my glasses. Doesn't need to be turned back on. Yes, there we go. I am the Senior Director for U.S. Airports for LAS Parking. With me today is Brendan Bowen, who is a Regional Vice President here in this area. Also, tomorrow, unfortunately, Chris Howley could not be here this evening, but he will be arriving tomorrow to meet with the airport and discuss the future. We are very honored to be here tonight. We are excited to be your choice for your parking operator. We are excited to bring the technologies and items that LAS Parking is so proud of. Not to get into a long, detailed explanation of our team, but I want everyone to understand that the people on this slide here, myself, Brendan, and Chris will be the team that will be involved with this airport. We have decided that this is a very important area of the country for us, and we want to make sure that we stay fully involved and we won't be turning the day-to-day operations over to a general manager or anyone else. We are your team, and we are going to be here for the duration. Real quickly, LAS Parking is the second largest parking operator in the United States. Interesting enough, we are the first and the largest operator in the world. Approximately 10 years ago, we partnered with a company called Indigo out of France. They purchased about 50% of LAS Parking, so that is how we can be the largest in the world, but yet only the second largest in the United States. So here in the United States, we have about 3,000 locations, 13,000 employees. We've been in business for 40 years. We were started by 4 individuals coming out of college that didn't know what to do with themselves, so they started parking cars, and 40 years later, they are still involved on a day-to-day basis. Here's just a list of some of the airports that we currently operate. And to Ms. Evans' question earlier, several of these are on a concession deal. And it really comes down to what the goals are of quickly that's our client base right now. I would like to step aside, have Brandon come up and say a few things, because LAS Parking believes that technology is the future of parking. And we're excited to bring those technologies to the airport, to your airport patrons, and really take it into the future. I think you'll be considering a resolution after ours about the parking equipment, which we partnered with Flash Parking in the past, and we think they are a company that is really forward-thinking, and a lot of our technology solutions will integrate with them. So I'll step aside, and Brendan can.
Sure, I'll be really quick. So I don't even think I need this microphone. I'm very loud. Yeah, I was in the military several years, so I don't know how to whisper. From a technology standpoint, as we turn to the 21st century, LAS Parking has really taken a step forward to, make a conscientious effort to do everything, invest as much money as we can in technology and moving into the 21st century and beyond. So with that, we have a proprietary, it's also an app and a website, LAS Go. So LAS Go, there's a widget that we could install on the website where people could prepay for parking. People could also pay for parking by their phone. They could see what the different prices are, book different times of the day. They could pay for parking before they get back to their car by simple things as using a QR code. We could just place a QR code anywhere in the terminal so someone could scan a QR code, prepay for parking, and get out very seamlessly. Also with LAS Go, when you prepay for parking, you download a quick, or you get a barcode emailed or texted to you, and you could use that to scan on this flash parking equipment that we're recommending to go in. So it'll be really easy for patrons to come in and leave. This just goes into our reservation system. Again, just another look on it. And then our customer care center. So basically, it's manned 24/7. Should any issues arise, we'll be able to, we have staff on 24/7 to answer those calls. and not just answer those calls, but we detail information of what happened during that call and what was the problem. And that sort of transitions me to the next slide, business intelligence. So we use Power BI, and we use those data analytics to help with our decision-making process. So from the call center's perspective, I'll just use that example. Say an issue is consistently happening when people go to exit the gate, right? They're constantly calling the call center and saying X, Y, or Z. Our business intelligence model will basically track what those problems are, and then we will be able to say, hey, over this period of time, during this time, we're finding this same problem happening. So we'll be able to sort of take action on those problems as they happen. So that was just one example of what the business intelligence tool will do, but it does many more things than that. So with that, don't want to take too much of your time. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Bowen. Questions, Alderwoman Evans?
I always have questions. So is the app the only way, like, people would be able to get out of the parking lot?
No, that would be an additional.
There'll be a person? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, right. Right.
Phew,
right.
because I just think of my mom, right? Like it would be, yeah. So as long as there's like a person for, our folks who aren't comfortable with that technology or maybe not have a cell phone.
Right.
To get out of the parking lot.
As is right now, I mean, we can, as we work with the airport and with the city, you already have a credit card lot out there.
Right.
It's possible that the other lot, the short-term lot, evolves into that.
Right.
But these are just enhancements.
No, I love it. I've used the app in LA and stuff, so I love it. But my mom, not so much.
Yeah, I get you. Absolutely.
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, we're just adding to, not taking away from.
Right. No, that's
Right.
that's perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions at this time?
Thanks for your time.
Appreciate you
all.
both being here. Thank you.
Thanks.
We do have 3 recommendations before council, still now looking for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move approval.
Motion by Alderman Ross to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Janser. Discussion on the motion to approve. Second call for discussion. Final call. Seeing none, motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Ross?
Yes.
Sitma?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Pittner?
Yes.
Padrigula?
Yes.
Motion is approved. That is the final item within our consent portion of the agenda. That takes us to item 9, the action items. 9.1 is an agreement with the Park District for its use of city lots. Park District originally entered into an agreement with the city for use of several lots along Burdick Expressway for flower gardens and small park areas until they are needed for future flood protection projects. Staff has recently been contacted by Tim Bauman and some of his colleagues who would like to plant pollinator gardens on various areas throughout the city because the JPA already addressed the access and use as requested by Mr. Bauman. City staff felt that the most efficient and consistent way to provide access to these lots was for this type of use, is to revise the current JPA with the Park District and to add the lots. Recommendation to council is to revise the joint powers agreement with the Minot Park District for use of city properties.
I happily and joyfully make a motion to increase our pollinator gardens in the city and recommend approval.
Motion by Alderwoman Evans to approve. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Janser. Discussion on the motion. Any discussion? Final call for discussion. Seeing none, the motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Pittner?
Yes.
Padrigula?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Sitma?
Yes, motion is approved. 9.2, the restoration effort for flood buyout properties not needed for flood control projects. A recent meeting was arranged by the Minot Park District with the Audubon Society and city officials, including Alderman Padrigula as the council liaison, Director of Community and Economic Development, and the NDR Program Manager, with the purpose to explore the possibility of leveraging CDBG NDR dollars with grant funds from the Audubon Society. As a result of this meeting, it is clear that there is an opportunity to coordinate expertise and resources among multiple parties using the CDBG NDR funds as leverage to undertake uses for flood storage areas which can benefit Minot residents. The recommendation to the full City Council was to approve the staff recommendations, including the creation of a task force and negotiating subrecipient agreements with the Audubon Society of North Dakota. For the folks either in the audience or at home, that task force is identified in the attached documents. Is there a motion?
I'll move.
Motion by Alderman Padagula to approve. Is there a second? Second by Alderwoman Evans. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Final call for discussion. Seeing none, the motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Padagula.
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
Sitma.
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Pittner.
Yes.
Motion is approved. 9.3 is approve the CDBGR NDR substantial amendment number 5. As a result of the space analysis undertaken for the relocation of City Hall to the former Wells Fargo building, the conclusion of the city engineer, consulting architect, and the space analysis committee, it appears possible that tenants in the building with month-to-month leases may have to be relocated to other locations. To assure that these tenants have access to the relocation benefits which can be funded by the CDBG NDR grant, it is necessary to amend the current HUD-approved action plan. The HUD rules set forth that a substantial amendment is required for the action plan when beneficiaries will be added or deleted. In this case, the relocation services and funding beneficiaries will be added to the existing relocation activities. The recommendation to City Council was to approve the CDBG NDR substantial amendment number 5 to add beneficiaries to relocations of services.
Move approval.
Motion by Alderwoman Olson to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Janser. Any discussion on the motion?
I just have a question. that
Alderwoman
maybe
Evans.
Somebody on the committee or Mr. Zakian can answer. How many tenants are in the building and how many are on month-to-month leases?
That might be best for either Lance or maybe Mr. Zakian would know that.
Like a rough, like are half the current tenants month-to-month? Like what are we talking about?
Mr. Mayor and Alderwoman Olson, I believe there are 6 tenants, and 2 of those are long-term leases, the rest are month-to-month.
Okay,
I could be off by 1.
okay, but thereabouts. Okay, thank you, Lance.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions? Final call. Motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Olson.
Yes.
Pittner.
Yes.
Padagula.
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
Sitma.
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Motion is approved. 9.4 is approved minor modification to termination agreement with Lighthouse Management. Lighthouse Management, in the wake of the court approval of conveying 1901 South Broadway to the city of Minot, and since the original termination agreement was approved by City Council, special details about the program income became known. As requested that a minor modification be made to the agreement to reflect that Lighthouse Management has provided the city of Minot with the program income information. The modified agreement will result in closing out the relationship with Lutheran Social Services, conveying the site to the city and allowing the city to resume the LMI rental housing family homeless shelter project. The recommendation to City Council is to approve a minor modification to the termination agreement with Lighthouse Management.
Move to approve the minor modification.
Motion is to approve from Alderwoman Evans. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Olson. Discussion on the motion. Any discussion? Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, Mayor. Just maybe a clarification. Will this have to come back before the council again to receive the property for it to convey actually to the city, or is this a done deal as far as the conveying once we pass this?
Our NDR Director, Mr. Zakian.
Mayor Sitma, Alderman Pittner, this is it.
Okay. So once this
Once
is,
this is, right, they've already signed this. The court order has been issued. They've submitted all the necessary documentation on their end. So once this is approved, this will be a done deal.
just if you could give us the next step then, John.
Next step will be to open it up to other nonprofits and see what we know there's interest out there. We will explore with them the level of their interest.
We will give them, obviously, I mean, it's public record, the copies of the subrecipient agreements we had with Lutheran Social Services. Eventually, we will negotiate a subrecipient agreement with one of those, and it will come back here. So this is coming back again. It will come back here to the City Council for approval.
Continue.
For, once you find a subrecipient, you're saying it'll come back?
Yes, the agreement will have to be approved by the City Council.
Okay, thank you.
As they say, many, many steps just to get that one step forward. Any other questions or comments? Alderman Pittner?
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm fully going to support this. I think this is obviously just what has to be done as far as bringing this back to the city ownership so we can move this project forward. And I am in favor of a family homeless shelter, but I'm going to put out there again, I would like to see a different location for this property and for this project. I don't feel comfortable putting it in this spot. We've just recently even had our Broadway corridor presentation from our engineering, and there's been comments about the safety, walkability, and pedestrian friendliness of especially the Broadway corridor, and in particular this area, the southern corridor of Broadway. So again, I would like to see us look elsewhere for this project. It's a project that has to happen. It has to happen for our city. It's beneficial, but I don't know if I can support the project going forward in this location. It's to that point because I just, macro level, looking at it from 40,000 feet, I think it's a short-sighted decision to put it in this location, in my opinion.
Further discussion on the motion? Alderman Janser.
I guess I would want to point out, however, in response to Alderman Pittner, that one of the things that we have been looking at as the Broadway corridor discussion has gone forward, as that committee has done its work, is to improve walkability in the Broadway corridor, and not necessarily always directly on Broadway, but through providing some pedestrian and bike and other ways to move maybe behind or to the outside of Broadway itself. So I think there are some solutions for some of those things. I would also point out that one of the, when you drill down into one of the ways that this thing can work, because of the fact that the NDR dollars can't be expended for operations, the associated commercial property with this site is sort of instrumental in getting it to function. And so I think we shouldn't lose sight of those additional facts. And there is no site that's going to be perfect for this, but I think this one checks a lot of the boxes. Thank you.
Last call for discussion.
Mr. Mayor,
Alderman Ross.
I'm gonna agree with Alderman Pittner on this. Just recently, and we became aware of other options in the community that would be much safer and could potentially put a shelter closer to government facilities, healthcare facilities, employment opportunities, and recreation. And I think before we get to the final point to where we give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down on this location, I think we have to fully explore other options that are out there. And I think there is absolutely one viable option out there that could put this project very close to being back on track and online very, very soon. Thank you.
Any other comments relating directly to the motion to approve this recommendation? Alderman Pittner.
I'll make my comment briefly. This is my second time talking, so I know I'm out of times. But again, I'm not opposed to this project. I want to make sure that all the stones are overturned. We look at all the options. We go down the rabbit holes. And that's all I'm saying. I'm not opposed to this project. I'm not opposed to this site 100%. I'm just saying I want to know that there's not a better option out there. That's all I'm saying. We're going to have possession of the property. It's in our back pocket. It doesn't hurt to look.
Final call. Seeing none, the motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padrigula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma.
Yes. Motion is approved. Final item within our action items is the 10th anniversary of the flood event planner contract. In preparation for the 10th anniversary of the Mouse River flood, the city decided to form a committee to determine how to commemorate the event. During the discussion with the committee, it was decided that with the time constraints, it was better to reach out and find a planner and organizer for the event. The recommendation to City Council is to approve a contract between the City of Minot and Hometown Elegance Event Catering and Production for the consultation of the 10th anniversary in commemoration of the flood. Is there a motion? Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve the contract.
Motion to approve by Alderwoman Evans. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Pittner. Seeing as it took us a little while to get to the motion here, I think I will go ahead and provide a little more detail on this. So coming up on June 26th is the 10th anniversary of the flood. We have pulled together with the coalition committee folks from both Burlington, our different folks within the corridor of the Mouse River Valley, Renville County, all of the outskirts that were affected, including Ward County and our local partners. We are planning not only a full day on Saturday, June 26th at Oak Park, that is going to involve a memory walk throughout the park, that is also going to have memorial and also kind of a commemoration of what was and moving forward and what is and what will be, including quite a few dignitaries and then even some entertainment, and then followed up with kind of a roundtable discussion of all of those folks that were part of the flood fight, flood recovery moving forward after that. There's going to be a ribbon cutting that day as well through the dedication of the MI2, MI3 completion. There is going to be a walk through the park, and then a bike from Burlington to Minot, and potentially a motorcycle run from Mouse River Park down to Oak Park, and potentially a 5K run as well. All of this came to be as we were discussing on what different ways we can get more people involved with understanding not only the flood, but all of the work that has gone into the recovery. It also became clear all of the different community partners don't have time to manage all of this activity. In doing so and talking with Mr. Zakian, NDR dollars can and are available for this. However, we are reaching out, looking for sponsorships to defray those costs. So very well that sponsorships might be able to defray that and move those dollars back. So with that, that is the end of the explanation for the process on this. Are there any questions or discussion? Alderwoman Evans.
So my hesitation is not about the commemoration. It really was about, this is the first time I'm sort of hearing about this. I mean, everybody here in this room except me was impacted by the 2011 flood. And I don't know if my fellow council members knew, like, you keep on saying we are planning, and I don't think any of us were even apprised that this was happening, and it feels sort of yucky not to be part of it. I mean, I trust it's going to be a great event and stuff, but it just, I think, I don't know, that was my hesitation. It's an important event in Minot's history and the 10 years and decades, and the work that the members of this council did in those 10 years is remarkable. So that was my hesitation.
So between Ward County, we have a commissioner, we have myself as the mayor, we also have Parks and Rec, and we have again, the mayor from Burlington and a number of other dignitaries, and rather than putting together the entire full city council to discuss this, this was the intent to roll this out as quickly as we could, and we have only met about 4 different times to this point to try to get to where we're at. So I hope yucky is not
and I think that I'm
necessarily.
really looking forward to our time in June together, right, as a council. Like to come up with better, ways to communicate these things to one another. Like I certainly don't have the bandwidth to sit on that committee. But I mean, I think, Mr. Stewart and the consulting firm he's had, that's one of our goals. And I'm looking forward to that, is figuring out a way that, we all have a million things going on in our different roles as mayor, as city council members, and, finding, creative ways that we can, just sort of share that with one another without violating open meetings laws. But also just, feeling like, we're all sort of in the loop about things. So that's all.
Any other questions or comments? Alderwoman Olson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Of these other entities, will any of them be helping pay some of the fees for this consultant?
With this, we identified the National Disaster Resiliency dollars to work on the program, as this is part of the Resilient program in not only commemorating what was, but also touting some of these programs moving forward. So the other communities are not. However, there is working on some programming that is going to tie the communities together, what we hope with unveiling of some other items that will be raised money that they will take part in. So,
Okay. And I appreciate that answer, because I think that that would be a question that people would ask. So thank you for the answer.
Alderman Patagula.
Yeah, I wanted to explain why I'm not going to support this. I think that comes from my clinical work in dealing with people who've suffered losses and had bad things happen. And one of the things I've learned is that we all respond very differently, and we need to be respectful of those differences in responding. I personally don't feel comfortable with an event and catering and a production. That's my own response. Other people may have a different response. And I think a somber recollection is something I feel more comfortable with. I certainly won't deny people their right to remember the event as they would. I just personally don't feel comfortable with this kind of a commemoration and event, and what I saw in the proposal. I just wanted to express that. I don't, it sounds to me, again, this is my interpretation, maybe this isn't the intent, and maybe this certainly won't be the actuality. It sounds more like a celebration, and I can certainly see that we need to look back on that and kind of reflect on the progress we've made and the progress we've committed to, the recovery and the efforts to protect our community from similar floods, which will probably go on for another generation. But from my reading of it, I see more of a celebratory mood than I personally feel comfortable with. So that's why I'm going to oppose this. I know it's only $4,500. I know it's going to come from the resiliency funds. I know that people, react very differently to events like this and commemorate them very differently. But I just personally don't feel comfortable with it.
Alderman Patagula, just to correct one misstatement, there is no catering at this event. Food trucks will be invited. The company does catering, but there's nothing in the contract about serving food, for clarification. Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just curious, as far as you mentioned sponsoring, will the event coordinator be reaching out for sponsors, or is that somebody, if someone's interested in sponsoring this, can reach out to city staff in particular?
We're going to help. We're going to have the coordinator help coordinate getting that information out to potential, but they can contact the event planner as well. The committee did acknowledge that some of those initial letters on the higher end are going to be coming from me directly.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Alderwoman Evans.
Turning into Pittner with more than one comment. So, Steve, I totally hear what you're saying. To me, I see this more as sort of a marking of what this community has done in the past decade. I mean, as somebody who was outside, thousands of miles away when this happened, and now to be here and to see, the flood control projects completed, and it is, and I tell everybody I talk to outside of this, it is nothing less than remarkable. I cannot believe. And you see other communities that take decades and decades and decades to really come back after a flood. And we certainly have work to do. But what this city and the people and the elected officials and the leaders have done is just, to me, it's celebrating and recognizing that. And I think oftentimes people forget how resilient they are. And it's important to remind people of where we were and where we are, and the huge strides that have been made by so many people rebuilding their lives, rebuilding our entire city. And so to me, that's how I interpreted what the intent of this event is more about than commemorating sort of the water lines. So.
And Alderwoman Evans, with all of the different community partners, and to Alderman Pontegood and the rest, anybody else who is listening, this is a collective organization of people that were all involved leading up to, during, and after the flood. A collective idea of how we can commemorate the tragedy and also celebrate the accomplishments of how far we've come. And to say that we need to sit and cry in our own tears, there's a reason why people are going to show up. They do want to acknowledge, and that's also part of the process on the memory walk, on leading through the process that led up to, during, and after, so we can acknowledge everything that has happened. And for the folks that want to participate, they can participate at their own level, and if it's too tough, then they can leave. Nobody's going to think anything less of them. And trust me when I say I've gone through this a million times in my own head as someone who's still recovering from the 2011 flood. There's ups and downs every day. And whether someone does want to show up or somebody wants to stay at home, one of the questions was, were the sirens going to be blared? And the answer was no, because it is still too tough on some people to hear that sound in association. We came up with a plan that can help address 12:57 and 20 seconds on June 26, 2011, that can still commemorate that without having to worry about people that maybe have some post-traumatic stress and can't deal with that. But I think it would be a shame, to Alderwoman Evans' point. We have come so far, and it is a flat miracle to look around the community and not see the scars to the point of what was. And the last point, and the gentleman that we're talking about here himself, his house, or where his house was, essentially is where our pump station by Broadway is at currently. So he also did step forward and decided to lower his rate as well, knowing that NDR dollars are going to be used for this, and try to keep things as cost minimum as possible. So outside of that, everything has been very collectively thought out in being as respectful to everyone who was not only here, but to help educate those who weren't. Because there's a lot of people that have moved to Minot since 2011 that have no idea what went on. And I think that's just as important.
I have one more comment.
Alderwoman Evans.
So, Steve, here's an idea. I think what you're saying is important. There will be people that think, they've processed and maybe this will bring up some feelings. Why don't you work on getting a team of mental health professionals who can be sort of present at the events in case somebody, we do this when we work, have marches with sexual assault victims or domestic, violence survivors, is having some folks on hand in case, the event triggers something and they need a safe person to talk to. But I think that would be, a really great idea. You may not be needed, but certainly to have that service available, I think might be something worthwhile.
And Alderwoman Evans, not to cut your idea short, the Burlington mayor actually has already proposed that within our discussions, and we're working on that.
Great.
Within the committee. Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, Mayor. The reason I asked about sponsorships is that I think this is a great idea. I think it is. This is celebrating the wins, not the losses. This isn't focusing on the negatives, trying to focus on the positive in the future and what we've gone through and where we're at. So the only reason I asked that is that I hope that whoever is soliciting sponsors, I would be willing to sponsor this event. This is, I think, important for our community, and it's important to educate not only everyone that was here, but the people that have come here since. So I hope I get that phone call.
Further questions or discussion, Alderman Ross.
Just a quick comment. I agree. I mean, with Alderwoman Evans on the situation of we've heard rumblings, but this is really kind of the first time that we've seen, or I have seen this. Not that it matters, but I also believe that, the more eyes on a situation, you can come up with issues. I totally respect Alderman Padragula's comments, I never thought of that. I just never thought of that. I see it both ways. I'm going to support this, but I see it both ways. And after listening to Dr. Padragula, it just like, yeah, there are still people in this community that are feeling pain. And I'm not sure that a poker run from Mouse River Park to Minot is going to help them overcome the pain. I understand the celebration. I totally do. And I agree. There are victories, and we've got to celebrate the victories. But I think we also have to keep in mind that there is a significant population that is still hurting out there. And I mean, it was just, that's the first that it really sunk into me. So I appreciate those comments. Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Final call. Motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Bittner?
Yep.
Padragula?
No.
Ross?
Yes.
Sitma?
Yes. Motion is approved. That takes us to item number 10. This is personal appearances. This is an opportunity for anyone to come forward and speak on any item that is or is not on our agenda this evening. If you come forward and just state your name and the city of residence, and take up to 5 minutes if you would like, sir.
Okay. Excuse me. My name's Neil Jensen, and I grew up in Minot. And I'm going to make a comment on the Broadway purchase. I've been a member of the Lord's Cupboard Food Pantry for approximately 30 years, and this has really been an undertaking. I understand Councilman Pittner's concerns about the location, but over the last 30 years, I mean, we were beating the brush trying to find a location where we could possibly do this, and this isn't just your run-of-the-mill homeless shelter. This includes services to reorient these people to be able to join the community. And it isn't just, and they'll all, from my understanding, they'll all be screened prior to being accepted to go out there and live, and it would be on a limited basis. They can't stay there forever. It's just like, say, transitional housing. So keep that in mind, because it's not just a homeless shelter. And that's what I keep hearing from the city council. You see it in the paper, you hear it on the news. It's more than that. And if we can hook up with a nonprofit that is medically inclined, like the one over by Arrowhead, they would like to go in there and put a whole nother addition on that lower single-family housing area for medical purposes. And that area there on the north side, you have approximately 3 blocks of low-income housing out there. And they go across Broadway all the time, you know, and nobody's been run over that we know of. So I just wanted to throw that out there and remind you guys that this is more than just a homeless shelter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jensen. Again, this is an opportunity for public appearances. Anyone to come forward and speak on any item that is or is not on our agenda this evening. Seeing none, we will move on to next item. This is 11. This is miscellaneous and discussion items. This is an opportunity for the council to bring up any items for the benefit of the order. Alderman Padragula.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention something. I've briefly talked about it earlier, and I wanted to mention it again. I think as a preliminary to something that the city manager will be bringing to us later as part of the budget process, and that has to do with the issue of permits and fees. In the past couple of months, we've had, I think, 3 or 4 different situations and items on the agenda about raising fees to make them commensurate with our cost of delivering services. And this is something that concerns me because it does not appear that we've had any policy or standard procedure for reassessing the fees we charge. In some instances, unfortunately, we don't even know how long it's been since we've done that. So what I've asked the city manager to do is to think about this as part of the budgeting process, and I think there'll be two issues. And I want him to be able to work this out, in his own way, in his own mind, and talk with staff and prepare some proposals for us. But I think I see two issues. One is the issue of mandating that there be a regular yearly reevaluation of these fees. And the second, which I think will be more controversial, is to, this is something I'm personally want us to consider, is mandating that they be tied to the cost of living and or the cost of delivering those services. And if for some reason we choose not to adjust the fees, that we have a public discussion about that. Because what I'm concerned is that we've gone in some cases for decades without looking at these things, and it's just some inertia that's built up. But I don't think that's a very good business practice. And the other issue is that I think we need to make allowances. This year, for example, and last year, I think we have done our best to keep the property tax low, and for good reason, because the economy is not in good shape with COVID, and there was so much uncertainty. So I don't think an automatic, cost of living increase makes sense. But I think if we don't do that, we should at least have to talk about it and publicly explain why we're not doing it. One of the problems that's occurred over the years is that we've been nice, so to speak, and not raised our fees, although our expenses have gone up. Our former city manager at one point showed a very dramatic chart of how in the past 10 years our expenses had gotten up 20%. And our revenues had gotten up 10%. So basically, we're getting deeper in a hole. And when we realize that, when there is some crisis, then all of a sudden, we raise things, and people get very upset, and they say, "Well, why haven't you raised them before?" And there's this incredible sticker shock. So that's kind of what's behind this, from my way of thinking. So I'm going to be kind of monitoring this, and I have asked Errol to kind of think it through and present something to us as part of the budget process. We do this intermittently. Usually every year we reevaluate the fees and reset the fees for public works equipment. But again, it doesn't appear that there's a standard policy and operating procedure, and that's something I'd like us to be thinking about. So just another, in this case, slightly more involved kind of plea for attention to this issue. Thank you.
Any other items to be considered or brought forward before the council? Seeing none, we move on to liaison reports. Alderman Pittner, we'll start over on your side.
My committees meet this week, so I've got nothing for you.
Alderman Janser.
Liaison committee has not met. No report.
Alderman Ross.
Wow, that's quick. Zoning ordinance and steering committee did not meet in May. However, we do have a meeting scheduled in June to start work on the subdivision ordinance. And just want to take a quick moment to wish my daughter Mackenzie happy birthday today. It's usually the day that tickets for the Host Fest go on sale, but it's also Mackenzie's 26th birthday. So happy birthday, Mackenzie. That is all I have.
Thank you, Alderman Ross. On the MAC EDC, Chamber EDC, we have met, continue to work on moving the intermodal portion of that economic driver forward, along with other items. Task Force 21. Just for the council's update here, Alderman Janser is going to be leaving us just briefly before the end on Wednesday of next week for the committee, as we do have a very high-ranking official from the United States Air Force coming in, General Wetherington. Very important that Team Minot has some discussions with him at some point. I will also be stepping out before the end of that session to meet with him. But it's very good to see General Wetherington in town as well, to be able to talk about not only the re-engineering of the B-52 bombers, but the getting construction of our new helicopter facility built up in Mounted Air Force Base, and also the Minuteman missile replacement process, continuing to push the importance with the top officials. So great to have them in town. Looking forward to that, and that's all I have at this time. Alderwoman Evans.
So I've had the library. It's nice to see Director Anderson in the house. She's usually remote, so So April was a great month for the library. The traffic numbers were higher than they've been in actually several years. So it's great. Even if you're driving by, you see people coming and going. You know, our young people are coming back. It's really great just to see the library being, utilized so well. The library will be doing a website update that is to look forward to in 2021, giving it a fresh facelift, not an overhaul, but just a fresh facelift. And so here's some things you may not know about the library. You can actually borrow music and movies from our Minot Public Library. There's an app called Hoopla. If you have a library card, do the app and you can save yourself perhaps streaming fees and look at movies and music. And my favorite thing, the tool library. This is one of our, it's just amazing. So we have like almost any tool you could think of available to borrow from the Minot Public Library, like a glue gun. I don't even know what this is, an orbit sander, a framing nailer kit, jewelry crafting kits. Like it is, you go to the library's website and you can look at the 10 pages of tools we have. And you can save yourself some money, especially for those tools you only need to use once or twice a year. So I hope we get to see all of those tools checked out and being used in our Minot yards and apartments and houses. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Alderwoman Evans. Alderwoman Olson.
Mr. Mayor, one of the busiest committees that I'm currently serving on is the City Hall Building Committee, and we meet on a very regular basis. After our last council meeting, we did meet again and have moved forward with some floor plan options that will be brought to you at our June 7th meeting. But we're working at a good pace because we do want to get all the details worked out so that we can put it out for bid and get construction going, because it'll be exciting to be in a new city hall. We talked a lot about CTE the last meeting. We're just waiting on the purchase agreement so that we can move forward on purchasing our building, and again, getting all of the details in line so that we can get that up and running. I have not been at a Service Based and Planning Council meeting in a few months. I missed the last one, but there is another one coming up in about 2 weeks, so we'll report on it the next time.
Thank you, Alderwoman Olson. Alderman Patagula.
I wanted to echo Alderwoman Evans's nice comments about the tool library. I'm a satisfied user, and I also don't know what the majority of this stuff is, but I'm sure there are many people who do and can use these tools effectively. It is really a nice thing. The only committee I serve as a liaison to that's met has been the Emergency Resource Council, which is a group of 2-3 dozen different emergency service organizations and individuals. And the focus of our meeting 2 weeks ago was on the drought and how the rural fire department in particular is being really strained, and all of the rural departments are. This is not looking good, and I think I've heard things from either Harold or Dan about the water situation. That's something that I hope that the staff will keep us updated on. The drought is serious, and I think we have to be very careful. We're lucky to have a paid fire department in Minot, but it still affects our water supply and affects our neighbors out in the country, even more so than us here. So I think that's something we're going to have to be monitoring. So it was a very productive meeting. Unfortunately, you get to hear and see some of the more unpleasant things that might happen, but that was about it. The Ward County Planning Commission will meet on Thursday night. I unfortunately will not be able to attend because of the council budget session. And the Commission on Aging will be meeting on Friday, and I will do my best to attend that meeting and report back to you next time. So not much happening here except concern about drought and water issues.
Thank you, Alderman Patagula. That is the end of our liaison reports. Before we get to the adjournment, I do have one last thing, seeing as it is still still May 17th here. I'd like to wish our sister city, Skien, Norway, happy 17. Mai. That they're celebrated yesterday, because I believe it's 2 or 3 o'clock in Norway right now. I only remember that from my last journey over there with the difference in time. So congratulations yet to another successful year for our sister city. Alderman Pittner.
You know, we're on these committees that meet so regularly. Every once in a while, we get the opportunity to sit on something with city business. And Alderman Ross and I had the opportunity to sit on the battalion chief assessment for retiring Assistant Fire Chief Lonnie Sather. There we go. I want to make sure I said his name right. So it was a great experience, very fun. It had some really great candidates, so I just wanted to give a shout out to them and what they're doing there and the leadership that they have at the fire department.
We should probably also mention congratulations, as his retirement party is coming this Friday, if my memory serves correct. So be there to wish him well. With that, we're out of stuff to talk about tonight. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Alderwoman Evans, second by Alderman Ross. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. We're adjourned.